Right, so yesterday I ranted about the new iPads, but let's now give Apple some credit where it's due because I think they've nailed the Apple TV refresh and they're heading in the right direction with that product. So yeah, let's delve into what Apple's done right. So the headlining feature with the new Apple TV has to be the lower price. So of course in previous videos I have complained about the price. It was too expensive for a set-top box in my opinion, and so decreasing the price something closer to $99 would be perfect. And Apple's done just that with this refresh. It's now $129. And because it's a lot cheaper in the US, prices here in the UK and in Europe actually isn't that bad for this TV. So this is actually still cheaper than the outgoing 4K model in the UK, so that's great news. And I'm happy this has not been affected by the major price hikes. Now of course you may be wondering, what is Apple compromising for the much lower price? Well, actually, I don't think they're compromising on a lot. So the first thing is the lack of thread support. Essentially, this is the feature where your Apple TV can be a hub for your smart devices, and I believe the new Matter standard does use this, but I don't think this is a major issue because Matter can use Wi-Fi instead, which of course this Apple TV has. Also, the HomePod Mini does have thread support, and I'm assuming those serious about smart home setups do have HomePods in their house, and so those can act as the hub instead. So yeah, not a massive issue in my opinion, and the same applies to the next omission because we don't have Ethernet on the base Apple TV anymore. And again, I don't think this is going to be a massive issue because many do already have fast Wi-Fi, so I don't personally think most consumers are going to take advantage of Ethernet, and this does come with Wi-Fi 6 as standard, so yeah, I don't think this is a massive omission. And finally, there is no longer a charging cable for the remote, but again, I don't think this is a massive issue because Apple's now given us Type-C with the remote, and Type-C being a way more common port means that I'm sure consumers do already have a plethora of USB-C cables. And you're not going to be charging the remote often in the first place, so yeah, this omission also isn't a massive issue. But honestly, apart from the cable, if you do care about Ethernet and thread support, you only have to pay $20 more to get those features, and you also get double the storage. And talking about storage, yes, Apple's given us a low price, but also more storage, which actually now means the base $129 box has 64 gigs of storage. That used to be $189, I believe. And so now getting that with the base tier that of course comes at a much lower price, yeah, that's pretty great. And what's even better is that the $149 model with of course thread support and Ethernet gets a whopping 128 gigs of storage. And this actually is the same price as the outgoing Apple TV HD. So yes, you can now get a maxed out Apple TV for the same price as the previous base Apple TV with of course no 4K support and an aging A8 chip. So yeah, the compromises Apple made with the base tier is definitely not an issue because ultimately you're not paying a lot more for these even outside of the US. And yeah, I'm just glad Apple's finally killed off the Apple TV HD because that was super old, and 4K should be standard now, so of course offering that as the base option for the Apple TV is pretty great, and Apple making compromises with other features, that's perfectly fine. And there's further good news with these low prices because you can now get previous generation Apple TVs from the Apple refurbished store for $99. Now that's a killer price, and yes, you get a worse chip and less storage, but this is still a very solid device, and if you don't need much storage and care more about things like thread support and Ethernet, this is pretty great. Now as for other upgrades, we do have a better chip in this. It's the A15, and yes, I know that's overkill for the TV, but of course it's going to result in better support, so I'll take it. Though I'm pretty sure this was a logistics move because they do produce A15 chips for the iPhones and the iPad mini, so giving it to the TV as well simplifies their supply chain process. And I'm pretty sure that's why this has 64 gigs and 128 gigs of storage because they're literally reusing iPad mini and iPhone logic boards, and those come with a minimum of 64 gigs. So yes, while 128 gigs of storage might be overkill for the TV, this ultimately makes sense from a logistics perspective. Oh, by the way, forgot about this, but there is actually another compromise, and that is no fan. So yeah, when the 4K model was introduced, Apple gave it a fan, but to be honest, A15's super efficient, and the iPad mini and the iPhones don't have ridiculous cooling inside of them, so of course, the Apple TV does not need this. And again, Apple's made the right compromise. Really, the fan might have been useful for gaming, but of course, many don't game with the Apple TV, so removing it and focusing on the TV experience, yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, considering the remote still does not have a gyroscope inside of it, I think Apple's given up on gaming for the Apple TV, and to be honest, I'm glad they have. They should focus on the TV experience. Talking about the TV experience, the final upgrade with this is HDR10 Plus support. That's pretty great to be honest, but ultimately that's a pretty minor upgrade. The big standout feature with this refresh is definitely the lower price. And yeah, finally I think Apple's heading in the right direction with the TV box, because the price has always been the issue with this, and so now being $129 does make it worth it in my opinion, because yes, it's slightly more expensive than the competition, but of course Apple's products always have been like that, but the premium now is less and can be justified for the Apple ecosystem features. And what's even better news is that quote tells us there could be even cheaper Apple TVs in the near future. So yeah, Apple's clearly focused on making the price more accessible with these boxes and getting more consumers to use Apple TVs, because this does strengthen the power of the ecosystem, but also of course it is going to be a gateway to Apple services like Apple TV Plus. So while Apple's lowering their profit margins on the actual hardware, they could be making it back through of course consumers buying other products, or of course subscribing to services. So yes, well done Timothy, you've done a fantastic job with this refresh. I'm very happy with it, and actually I have ordered one because, as I've said in previous videos, my Samsung TV has slowed down, so I've been in the market for this, and especially at that price, I had to get this. Anyways, let's end this video with some random tidbits regarding this new Apple TV refresh. The first thing is more RAM, so you now get 4 gigs of RAM as standard, and again I'm assuming much like storage, this is a logistics move, because the iPad mini and the iPhone 13 that also have the same chip do get 4 gigs of RAM as standard. Now moving to the actual box, there is no TV branding anymore on the actual box, it's just an Apple logo similar to of course the Mac Mini Apple sells. And by the way, because there's no fan in this new TV box is 12% thinner and also 50% lighter. Now of course, I understand that won't make a massive difference. This is a box that stays on a TV stand for most of its life, but either way I thought I'd mention it. And finally, the packaging is different for this Apple TV refresh, and there's no more plastic wrap. Anyways, tell me your thoughts regarding this Apple TV refresh in the comments. Anyways, thank you for watching guys, make sure to like and subscribe for the latest Apple news and rumours. Check out the video in the clip above on details regarding the iPhone 15 series, and on that note, see ya peeps.